Hello everyone, and welcome back down here to the Gamer's Den, with me, your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. I've got some good news for all of you folks, and a little bit of bad news for myself, thanks to a vote of exactly one by you fine folks, specifically from a Mr. Tony Holloway. I will be diving back into the player's guide, covering The Alchemist. I say it's bad news for me because The Alchemist has a lot of different build options. They have a lot of different class features that are flexible to one degree or another, just even off of the base character class. This doesn't even get into any of the archetype options, which, well, let's be honest, I've been avoiding those anyways. Just a whole another level of dynamic and dimension and different specializations, which some are not nearly as complex as others, but, well, we can get into different archetypes another time. So, The Alchemist, what is it? Well, from the flavor, it's that crazed inventor, that person who's in the back trying to find a way to transmute lead to gold. They have different alchemical admixtures brewing at any different time. They may have random explosions or just clouds of billowing fog-like cloying mist just eke out from every single seam of their house as they come stumbling out coughing, waving it all away. Most sane people will avoid the alchemist, but alchemists are neither sane, neither are their adventuring friends, who, by the way, benefit from having the alchemist in their party. If I had to place the alchemist, I would say they're a good supplemental character class. They kind of fill a similar niche to the bard in that the bard can do a lot of different things, so too can the alchemist, depending on how they're built, depending on what abilities you pick out. And really, where you can find more of this information, this was brought up by a recent commenter, a Daigle May. Apologies, so many apologies if I have messed up the pronunciation of your name, but it was pointed out to me that I could reference the books that information comes out of a bit more, and also point people in the direction of where I try to draw my information. And in this case, I work mostly out of, for The Alchemist, with the Pathfinder Advanced Player's Guide book. In fact, there he is right there. Elf, leathery apron, dagger, all kinds of alchemical items available right there. And right next to the witch, wouldn't you know it? The witch is in this book as well. But a really handy resource that I like to make use of, aside from the books that I have on hand, is the D20 PFSRD website, which is just, well, www.d20pfsrd.com, which, now that I've spelled that all out, you probably see it or have seen it on the title image that I made for this. So, enough of my shenanigans covering that and relaying my sources to you. Let's move on with an overall class overview. What does the Alchemist get exactly? Well, starting us off, Alchemists are proficient with light armor and only light armor. They also get a moderate attack bonus, which is on par with clerics and rogues and the like. They get a D8 for hit dice, which again puts them in that same category there. They get good fortitude saves, great reflex saves, and poor will saves. So fortitude and reflexes, you're going to be doing fine, but will saves are really going to be the chink in your armor here. They're also a partial spellcasting class. They get up to 6 level spells via prepared extracts. Now, most of the interview information, some clarifying things that people who worked on this book put out there, the extracts are essentially spells. They function like spells that target the alchemist themselves only. They just called it extract because flavor-wise that fit with spells, and it saved them from having to add in lines upon lines of more information like, oh, these are spells, but these are spells that only work for the alchemist. Everything I'm telling you right now, they put it down as extracts because, one, it just fits with that aesthetic that they're trying to build with the class. And second, it saved them a lot of editing and time and writing, and also ink. So, but the thing with the extracts is they're essentially spells, but they can only target themselves with those spells, so it's a lot of different buffs. The only way you can expand this out to help your allies and buff your allies is with other class features. Class features such as discoveries. Now, discoveries are described as these alchemical discoveries that the alchemist has made while working in their lab. And what these do is that they'll alter other class functions such as your bombs, your extracts, your mutagens. They'll give you a different variety of options, and this is where the class starts to get tricky to kind of classify as to what it does well, because depending on what you select, you can alter different functions to help your character work in very different ways. You could be a replacement for disarming traps, although magical traps may be tricky without a little bit of planning with the rest of your group. You could become an incredible brawler. You could just be a mad bomber type, going the Junkrat route from Overwatch. But let's keep us going here before I ramble on too much. As I mentioned, you get bombs. These are throwable, damage-dealing items that you can make, and they are a limited daily resource. And we'll be covering that shortly as well, too. You also are able to craft alchemical items and eventually craft them pretty damn quickly, and you're able to use poisons and get resistances to poisons all the way up to outright immunity, and that poison immunity comes on relatively early for the class at 10th level. Not too shabby at all, especially since some of those creatures around that level are just dripping with some pretty deadly toxins that you want to have that immunity for. And last but not least, you get mutagens. Mutagens are different things that you can use to enhance your physical aspects, but you do get an accompanying debuff with it. Again, with different discoveries and the like, you can change up the kinds of mutagens that you have to where you're boosting your intellectual capacities, but at a penalty to some of your physical abilities as well. The other thing I should mention is that alchemists get the throw anything feat for free, essentially, as a class feature, and it's great for their bombs and everything, but I also just like the idea of somebody breaking into an alchemist's lab and the alchemist losing their mind, chucking the mortar and pestle and the scales and everything that they have on hand, just a constant stream of different kinds of debris from their lab. Funny image in my head, humorous probably only to me. So, let's keep this moving on, shall we? And take these off. I don't know why I left them on. So, for your stat array, I go with the 20-point buy, meaning you have 20 points to buy your stats up to different points. I just find it handy, useful, and easy. I prefer rolling for stats myself, but this just gives us a nice baseline, nice average, and makes it pretty clear where you want to prioritize things. Specifically, with this class, you want to prioritize your intelligence above all else. This affects the number of bombs you get, the save DCs for your extracts, if that somehow ever becomes applicable. It affects so many different things for your character, and also gives you more skill points, which you're not necessarily a skill monkey like a rogue or a bard can be, but it's still nice to have those. The next close second, almost just as important, is dexterity. Not only is it a prime stat that affects your initiative, your reflex saves, your armor class, several skills, this will also affect your ranged attack abilities, which, since we're going to be going more with the mad bomber kind of build, you really want that to be pumped up, because that'll affect all of your ranged attacks as you chuck your bombs at your targets. Then after that, at a nice, comfortable third place, we have Constitution. Now, you can be a good brawler depending on your mutagens, but we want to stay back a little ways. But our bombs don't have that much of a range to them. So having a decent amount of hit points is important, and also may as well capitalize on those good fortitude saves and add in a little bit more of a bonus to it. Same idea with dexterity too. Good reflex saves never hurts to have a good dexterity score to go on top of that. Then coming in and tying at that 4th and 5th place, we have strength and wisdom. Which of these you have higher or lower really ultimately depends on you. Having a nice +1 bonus out of each, I think, is a pretty solid option. Because if somebody does mix it up in melee with you, you can use your mutagens to boost your strength and just really let them have it and surprise the crap out of them. But because your will saves are your weak point, are a very, very key weak point, having a decent wisdom score certainly doesn't hurt either. Certainly, especially since you're going to be avoiding melee more often than not, you may find yourself comfortable with pumping a few extra points into wisdom here just to make sure you don't fall prey to enemy spellcasters. Charisma, like for many classes, is a pretty solid dump stat. Certainly you don't have to. This is just a build guide to help you figure out what's going to be mechanically more effective and go into the mechanics of the different class abilities. But for this build in particular, we're not worried about this. Like I said before, most sane people are going to be avoiding you. Your adventuring friends are already going to be on, well, maybe they're not even friends. Maybe you've just stuck to them like a tumor, but you are still going to be not so concerned about this. You have no social skills whatsoever, and I mean that literally for this class. I'm not speaking to you out there. This class does not have diplomacy, bluff, any of that, so you're not worried about your charisma in the slightest. Going on from there, we want to pick out a good race for this particular if I could speak, goodness, talk about having no social skills. I wonder where mine are going right now. You want to pick out a good race that capitalizes on this stat array and also benefits the class features that we have. And for those of you that maybe don't know, hobgoblins make a really good choice. The hobgoblins, unlike a lot of the other goblinoid races, don't have a penalty to their intelligence. They get a bonus to their dex and their constitution at a +2 for each of them. No penalty stats at all. And dexterity is one we definitely want up there, and it's certainly not going to hurt us to have a better constitution score. To top it off, dark vision out to 60 feet, and for the alternate favored class option, rather than getting an extra hit point or skill point, you can add a 1/2 to the number of bombs that you can use per day every time you select this option. So going with this build, you get a number of bombs equal to 1 per character level of Alchemist, and then another bonus based off of your intelligence bonus. So if you're following this build at first level, you're going to have a +4. And if you take this particular alternate favored class option, that's 4.5. So when you bump up to level 2, normally you'd be at 5, but by selecting this again, you go up to a nice solid 6, meaning for most combat encounters, you're going to be able to chuck a bomb and contribute a decent amount of damage. But moving on from there, we come down to the elf, and elves, once again, once we serve this up, it actually works really nicely for this class. This gives us a +2 bonus to our dexterity and intelligence scores, which is exactly where we want them. We want to keep pumping these as much as possible. But the downside is this comes at a -2 to our constitution score, so our hit points are dropping a bit. Not ideal, but you know what? Given that we're getting our 2 prime stats boosted, we can overlook this. And the other thing that helps us overlook this is that elven immunity to sleep and a +2 bonus to will saves against enchantment effects. So both things that would be affected primarily by your will score, you are outright immune to or have a bonus against. So this is a really nice thing to have in your back pocket and makes the elf an incredibly strong contender for the alchemist class. Their favored class option is having 1 additional extract, which is your spells essentially, equal to your highest level possible, -1. So let's say you're playing an alchemist that has access to their level 6 spells. By picking this class feature, you can select anything from 5 down to 1. You can't take another 6, which is unfortunate, but still having extra spell options to prepare each day that's a handy thing to have. So again, really solid choice. Oh, and given that the elf also is automatically proficient with the longbow, regardless of their class, this can give you some alternate ranged options as well. Anytime you might have run out of extracts, don't have an alchemist kit, or whatever's happened to prevent you from making bombs or using more bombs, you now have a pretty handy option for dealing out some more damage. Now, from there, we come down to our favorite humans, your vanilla standard character race. But it's rarely a bad option for anything. Getting that +2 bonus to apply to whichever stat you want, which in this case is going to be your intelligence if you're paying attention. You also get an extra feat and extra skill ranks. It's not bad at all. That extra feat is always going to be handy, particularly if you select well. They get the same favored class option as the elf, the alternate favored class option, selecting an extra extract and all that. And then coming down from the human, we have the half-orc. Like humans, they get a +2 bonus to the stat of their choice. And they also get the orc ferocity feature, which is always good. And just a reminder, orc ferocity, essentially, if your character's taken down below 0 hit points, but not down to -10 where they'd be just dead and gone, well, you can keep acting, not with like full round actions and the like, but you can take at least a single standard action until the next turn comes around, which hopefully you're above your hit points. So we want to keep from dying or dropping unconscious at least. So get one of those extracts going, heal yourself, give yourself extra hit points however you can, just to keep yourself standing long enough for the actual healer to come in and take care of you. It's always a good option. Of course, you know, that's not going to happen. This can be a good way to give the big bad evil guy one more middle finger just before you shuffle off from this mortal coil. What really sells this, though, is the alternate favored class option, and that adds 1/2 to your bomb damage each time you select this. So we'll get into bombs in just a second here, but basically bombs do 1d6 points of damage plus your intelligence modifier. So at level 1, this becomes 1d6 plus 3.5. By level 2, it's 1d6 plus 4, assuming your intelligence hasn't gone up. If you've applied this to your intelligence, or the stat bonus to your intelligence, then, you know, we're getting up to 5 instead. So you can start to see where by planning out the stats, the bonuses you get from the different races you select, you really start affecting the class options for the alchemist really quickly, really early. And depending on the alternate class features that you pick out, you can advance that even further in maybe incremental ways, but no less effectual. So I said we were going to talk about bombs now. Let's keep this thing rolling here. Bombs and dropping them. So, like I mentioned before, you get a number of bombs equal to your character level plus your intelligence modifier. Now, essentially how this works is once you make them, they decay quickly, so if they're unused, they become unstable and unusable. They're essentially worthless. And you create the bombs in the middle of combat and you throw them. So you create and throw, and it costs you 1 standard action. And this does provoke attacks of opportunity. So, like I said before, we are avoiding melee. We want to stay out of melee as much as possible in order to make use of these bombs. It's unfortunate you're only able to use one per round early on, but it's still a decent amount of damage, and at lower levels, 1 attack per round, you're keeping up more or less with everybody else. The nice thing with the bombs, though, is that you're targeting touch armor class, meaning you're not taking their armor into account. You're looking at that baseline of 10 plus their dexterity bonus, plus if they have some kind of magic ring or barrier, you're taking the rest of their actual physical armor out of the picture. So if it's a scaly beast or somebody wearing full plate, you're subtracting a good chunk of their defense away and hitting them directly. On top of that, like I mentioned before, bombs deal 1d6 plus your intelligence modifier for damage, but they also deal minimum damage as splash damage in the immediate 5-foot radius around the target. Assuming you're not hitting a large target, then you kind of just figure it out from there. But they have a 20-foot range increment, and they count as weapons. They're not very long-range weapons, but, you know, if you're standing 40 feet away, chucking bombs over the shoulders of your barbarian, paladin, and fighter friends, well, you're going to be contributing in a fairly meaningful way. And because these count as weapons, a lot of feats will apply to them. So point-blank shot, two-weapon fighting, stuff like this is going to work, and work very, very nicely. The only weapon feat I should mention that this doesn't work so good with is going to be deadly aim, and that's because deadly aim specifically does not work with touch attack weapons. And really, it kind of makes sense, especially with the bomb, something that has splash damage. You can see why maybe this wouldn't work. I could possibly be persuaded depending on the level of technology, but that's going to be incredibly subjective, and I'd say consult your DM first, see if you might be able to sway them. But for now, with this build, we are going to be going with rules as written, and bombs cannot be used with deadly aim, just as is. Other than that, the only real drawback to the bombs are that they deal fire damage. This is the most common form of energy resistance and outright immunity, so you're going to be wanting to use your discoveries to expand your different bomb options to sonic damage, electric damage, frost damage, any number of different other things that are not so commonly resisted. That said, fire damage, well, I'd argue that there may be a chance for your targets to catch fire or for you to set things on fire. I should also mention splash damage. There's a reflex save allowed for half. Not great, but you know what? It's still bonus damage either way. So let's take what you can get and enjoy it. We're going to be focusing this build on capitalizing on this particular advantage, with maybe having a few supplemental things there just in case we have an oh shit moment drop down on us. But I could ramble on a bit too much here. You can already see how this class might be getting a bit complicated fairly quickly, fairly early on. So spare a prayer for me, toss a little bit of pity or of your pity my way. With that said, though, I've been your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. Thank you all for your time, and you folks have yourselves a good night.